It is the duty of the Coast Guard to regulate and supervise the handling and stowage of explosives and other dangerous articles of cargo on board merchant vessels, both foreign and domestic, in the ports of the United States. Regulations have been made. Their observance will afford maximum safety to vessels, their passengers and crew, provide protection against sabotage, afford security to our vital port facilities, and safeguard communities adjacent to our ports. Remember, the success or failure of our armed forces in the field depends to a considerable extent on our ability to get these explosives and military ammunition to them on time and in an undamaged condition, ready for immediate use. The principal military explosives are small arms ammunition, anti-aircraft and machine guns, anti-tank guns, chemical warfare ammunition, gas, smoke, and incendiaries, rifle grenades, hand grenades, fuses of all types, blasting caps, anti-tank mines and fuses, pyrotechnics, ground signals, flares, star and drift signals, spotting charges, and other types, ammunition for cannon, separate loading shell, smokeless powder for cannon, armor-piercing shell, trench mortar ammunition, bombs, torpedoes. There are many other types of explosives and military ammunition that are named in the regulations. All these various types of explosives come from such points as arsenals, ammunition depots, and manufacturing plants. These explosives are transported and arrive at vessels' side via trucks, barges, and freight cars. Shipments are especially handled throughout the journey from shipping point to destination. The vessel's owner, agent, or master must secure a permit from the captain of the port before loading explosives on board a vessel. He must submit a preliminary cargo stowage plan showing where it is proposed to stow dangerous cargo. A manifest of the explosives and other dangerous cargo shall also be submitted with a request for a permit. A permit to move a vessel from point to point in the harbor during the loading of explosives must be secured from the captain of the port. The captain of the port is required to certify to the naval commandant that a vessel about to join the convoy has been loaded in accordance with regulations. It is required that bulk high explosives and certain types of military ammunition liable to mass detonation be loaded on board vessels at explosives loading anchorages or explosives loading piers which are remote from other facilities within the port. The munitions officer is indicating on the chart the explosives loading anchorages in this particular port. Observe the distance from the anchorages to the shore. This port has an explosives loading pier authorized for such purposes by the captain of the port. The officer is now indicating its location. Military ammunition as cargo may be loaded at ammunition loading piers authorized by the captain of the port. When military ammunition is taken aboard defensively armed merchant vessels as munitions, the captain of the port may authorize such loading at any pier which he considers satisfactory. The personnel of the Navy gun crews assigned to this vessel handle and stow the ammunition for the defensive armament aboard their own vessel. In supplying these vessels, a certain portion of the ammunition is stowed in the magazine below deck for safety. Certain other portions are stowed in the ready boxes on deck, adjacent to the mounts, ready for instant use. Explosive loading anchorages are established under authority of Coast Guard headquarters upon recommendation of the captain of the port and the district Coast Guard officer. Explosives loading piers and ammunition loading piers, except those directly under the control of the Army and Navy, are authorized by and subject to the authority of the captain of the port. He has the authority to decide when and by what vessels they may be used. Inspection and supervision of the loading or unloading and the stowage of explosives is under the authority of the captain of the port, who may assign a Coast Guard detail to each job. The munitions officer is discussing with the lieutenant in charge of an explosives loading detail the particular problem involved in the loading about to start on a vessel. A complete understanding between the commanding officer and his subordinate will facilitate the job of supervising and will minimize the chance of difficulties arising. The loading detail arrives at the explosives loading pier. Before proceeding further, you are reminded it is essential that you know the parts of a vessel and their arrangement, especially the principal divisions of cargo holds, hatches, and cargo handling gear. Here is a diagrammatic profile of a Liberty-type cargo vessel. When loading explosives, the safety of the rigging used in handling such cargo is of the greatest importance. Here is shown the forward cargo booms and gear. Familiarize yourself with the cargo winches, cable whips, blocks, and cargo hooks. Check every item of this rigging to be certain none is defective. Cargo booms are designed to handle a maximum load. Do not permit overloading. The midship cargo handling gear. Aft cargo handling gear. Close-up view of the forward cargo handling gear. Commencing at the bow of the vessel, we will show you progressively the main divisions of this ship. Here is the bow of the vessel, which includes that part forward of the collision bulkhead. Next is the number 1 cargo hatch. This hatch includes number 1 tween deck hold, number 1 lower hold, and deep tanks. You now see number 2 cargo hatch. having a 'tween deck and lower hold only. Number 3 cargo hatch. Note the aft end of these holds are next to the boiler room. The ship's main boilers are close to the division bulkhead. This bulkhead is called a heat bulkhead. The next main section of this vessel is the machinery spaces. Located here are the main boilers and engines, the very heart of the vessel. Number 4 cargo hatch is next aft of the machinery spaces. Note the deep tank cutting into the forward portion of the lower hold. The shaft tunnel passes through the center of this hold. Hatch number 5, like the other 4 hatches, consists of a 'tween deck and a lower hold. The shaft tunnel continues through the lower hold. The stern. Note the aft peak bulkhead. This is the aftmost complete division bulkhead and forms the aft boundary of the holds in hatch number 5. The arrangement of hatches as shown are for the Liberty type vessel. Other vessels are different in design, but basically the characteristics of hatches and holds are the same. Some vessels will have a shelter deck cargo hold. Other types of vessels will have 2 or 3 'tween decks. Combination passenger and cargo vessels have an arrangement of cargo holds peculiar to their own design. It is important to know the structural arrangements and principal divisions of various types of vessels. This knowledge will help in the discharge of your responsibilities. A vessel about to load explosives shall be checked for compliance with provisions of the regulations, especially for safety and the prevention of fire. If possible, this is done before the vessel goes to the explosives loading anchorage or pier. Require all debris to be cleaned up and removed from the vessel. Decks in way of hatches shall be kept free of loose lumber, cables, hawsers, and other articles of ship's equipment. Neatness, order, and cleanliness contribute materially to safety. Insist on the vessel being ship-shape. Check the pier, especially for fire hazard. Require debris to be cleaned up and removed. The officer in charge directs the boss stevedore to start his longshoreman on board. His detail is trained in checking each longshoreman. The actual work of handling explosives is done by these specially trained longshoremen. To assure safety, they are constantly supervised. Longshoremen, winchmen, and others must have an explosives handling permit, a red card, before they will be allowed to work in holes containing explosives. They shall also possess a Coast Guard identification card. These cards are issued by the captain of the port only to those men who have been examined and found competent. Before they can commence work, each man must be identified by a member of the Coast Guard detail assigned to supervise the loading of the explosives cargo. No liquor, matches, or firearms shall be carried by anyone who may be about during the progress of the work. Lunch boxes and thermos bottles shall be checked to be certain they contain only edibles. Pencils, fountain pens, envelopes, and similar possessions have been made into ingenious incendiary devices. Danger from this source must be alertly guarded against, as it is here that sabotage can creep in. It is the duty of the Coast Guard detail to see that the regulations with regard to the equipment used and the methods of handling and stowing are strictly observed. Safety is assured only to the degree that the guards perform their duties. It is very important that all equipment and tackle to be used by stevedore's men, such as falls, slings, baskets, crates, and boxes, be in sound condition and of sufficient strength for the work to be done. It is required that the ship's officer completely check this equipment before the loading of explosives can begin. The ship's officer sees to it that the winchmen assigned to the job fully understand the operation of the ship's cargo winches. The Coast Guard officer checks up at each point of possible weakness or defect. Unsound equipment shall be replaced. It is the responsibility of the master of the vessel and the boss stevedore to be sure the equipment is sound. Any equipment which in the judgment of the master of the vessel or the Coast Guard officer in charge is not in safe working condition shall be rejected. No chances shall ever be taken in handling explosives. The gamble is too great. Mistakes may mean disaster. Stack fires and sparks from a stack or galley smoke pipe can carry live soot particles into the hold of a vessel and cause a fire. All vessels, including barges, lighters, and towboats, having smokestacks, shall protect against sparks by having such stacks fitted with spark screens. Here is a towboat with a galley smoke pipe fitted with a screen. Note this barge with screen protection improperly fitted on smoke pipe. The stack or stacks of a vessel loading explosives shall be covered with a spark screen. Check the screening to be certain that it is in good condition. A vessel loading or having explosives on board shall fly the red flag. This flag is known as the Baker. It is used to warn passing and nearby ships of the dangerous nature of the cargo on board. Fire is the greatest potential hazard to a ship with a cargo of explosives. Smoking shall not be tolerated. Post plenty of no smoking signs. Enforce this regulation on the ship, in the railroad cars alongside, on the pier, and its approaches. Welding or cutting operations involving the use of open flame or arc shall not be undertaken on a vessel having explosives on board except upon special permission of the captain of the port. Before any explosives are loaded, the fire hose must be run out, connected, and ready for instant use. Test the water main for volume and pressure. Do this with the ship's officer present. Portable hand extinguishers shall be readily available. All members of the detail shall be familiar with the locations of this equipment and shall understand the know-how of its use. At least one member of the detail shall have a roving assignment covering the weather deck. He shall check safety conditions on deck and know what vessels or small craft approach from the water side. Vessels and small craft not having legitimate business shall not be permitted to come alongside. A gangway guard shall be posted on all vessels loading explosives. He shall be certain none but authorized persons board the vessel. Members of the crew returning to the vessel and not in full control of all their faculties shall, for purposes of safety, be turned over to the ship's officer on duty. No artificial light, except electric lights or electric flood lamps, shall be used while loading or unloading explosives. In holds or other spaces where explosives are being handled or stowed, a non-spark type of hand flash lamp should be used. Prior to cargo being received, the holds and magazines shall be carefully inspected. All debris shall be removed from the hold or magazine. All spaces where it would be possible to conceal incendiary or other subversive devices shall be carefully searched. A careless search could result in disaster. A broken board is being replaced in a Type B magazine. This type magazine is required for the stowage of ammunition or explosives in bulk as specified in the regulations. The primary purpose of this type of magazine is to prevent packages of explosives or ammunition from coming in contact with the metal structural parts of the vessel. The projections of the magazine that you see here are necessary to cover structural parts, operating rods, trunks, and other parts that protrude into the cargo hold. Stanchions, web frames, and brackets in the holds are similarly sheathed with lumber. The floor of a Type B magazine is formed by laying dunnage boards over the deck. This is a Type A magazine that has been built into part of the square of the hatch. Note this magazine is constructed with tight boarding with a smooth interior surface. The floor of this magazine is formed by the hatch covers of the tween-deck hatch. The floor is covered with asbestos paper as a barrier against heat in the event a fire occurred in the hold below. Here is shown the non-dangerous cargo stowed in the balance of the square of the hatch area. Observe the construction of the division bulkhead between the magazines and this cargo. Here is shown an operation of loading bulk TNT. A pie plate, tray, or pallet should always be used for drafts of boxes of this description. In lifting this draft, notice the two boxes that are not supported by the pie plate. This is poor loading. You now see the draft landed in the magazine. Observe the handling. Most of it is carefully done. A few times the boxes are handled too roughly. Check this constantly and stop rough handling. Broken or damaged packages of ammunition or explosives in bulk shall not be permitted to be stowed on board a vessel. If found on the vessel, they shall be removed. While recoupering of packages is a feasible operation, it is recommended that no recoupering be permitted on board a vessel, including barges or on a pier at which a vessel is loading explosives. At most loading areas, the Army is providing ammunition inspectors who are trained and skilled in such matters. Where possible, after you have safely removed broken packages, turn such packages over to the Army representative for such reconditioning as is necessary. Contrast this loading with the loading you have just seen when the two cases were not properly loaded on the tray. This represents a perfect loading of a draft of packages of high explosives. A considerable amount of fixed and semi-fixed ammunition, rocket shells, and powder propellant charges are shipped in the tri-pack package. For overseas shipment, it is protected by an outside wooden crate as you see it here. Trays or nets with pie plates or pallets should always be used in loading tri-packs. The tri-pack consists of 3 fiber tubes having telescopic closing means. They are assembled in one bundle by means of a clover-leaf-shaped metal base and similar metal top. The assembly is secured in place by a center rod with threaded ends and wing nuts for locking in position. A safety wire and lead seal, similar to a railway car door seal, is fitted. Because of the shape of the assembled package, you will hear it referred to as a bundle pack, tri-pack, cloverleaf pack, or a fiber pack. This package should not be subjected to rough handling. The handling shown here illustrates the correct treatment of the tri-pack. Dropping this package on end may damage the cartridge case enough to render it unfit for use in the field. A description of contents, the weight, cubic measurement of the package, and the shipping name as given in the regulations are stenciled on the wooden crate. Notice the orderly and workmanlike manner in which the tri-packs are loaded on the tray or pie plate, and how completely the net encompasses the tri-packs, preventing any chance of one falling from the draft. Here is some of the ammunition shipped in tri-pack. The metal bands and nails of the wooden crate have already been removed. The ammunition inspector now withdraws the remainder of the wooden crate from underneath the tri-pack. Note the cloverleaf metal ends that secure the 3 fiber cylinders in place. There is a nameplate assembled at each end of the tri-pack. One plate carries the military description such as 3 rounds complete, shell with fuse, smoke. The other plate carries the descriptive name as required by the regulations. In this case, ammunition for cannon with smoke projectile. The inspector cuts the seal which holds the wing nut in place on the through bolt and backs the wing nut a sufficient distance to remove one of the cylinders. The inspector now unravels the taped seal over the joint of the telescopic section of the cylinder. And withdraws the projectile from the cylinder. Note the care with which these experienced explosives men handle this ammunition. The metal shoe is fitted to provide bearing for the shell in the fiber container. He reverses the container, unwraps the tape from the opposite end of the same container. And withdraws the cartridge case. Note the powder charge inside a cloth bag in the cartridge case. This is semi-fixed ammunition. Both inspectors now illustrate how the projectile and cartridge case is assembled.